Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and welcome back to week 3 of the WBE. Of course, I'm the coach of the Melbourne Rotoms, and this week we're up against GameBoyLuke, the coach of the Bristol City Blazikens. I was really excited going into this week for this match. Luke is someone that I very much respected and appreciated on YouTube, and one of the main reasons is because when I started making YouTube videos, he was like one of the PokeTubers that was up and coming, so it's really cool to see how much he's succeeded since then, and he's just an overall great guy. So I was excited to play him. I think we've actually played in the NBL this last season. It's been quite a while, but I haven't played him in singles before, and he was looking really hot coming into this week at 2-0. Of course, we won last week in a really close battle, but had a pretty rough loss in the first week, one game that was definitely winnable. So going into this week, I wanted to try out, I want to say something different by playing with a hyper offensive team. So of course, this is the team builder, and you can see Luke's Pokemon on the end. So I designated the ones that I expected him to bring with the asterisk marks. I wasn't too sure whether Aerodactyl and Tentacruel would come out, but overall, I was scared of a bunch of things. I think like Primarina was a Pokemon that I was actually really worried about because my team had no real great switch-ins into Moonblast. So I opted for like a really offensive team for this week, and Mega Slowbro was used kind of as a defensive pivot to switch into things. So Life Orb Rotom Heat, which could really one-shot almost anything on his team if it was out in the proper position. Gracium Z Kartana with Swords Dance. So the idea is if I am able to get a Swords Dance off, then I can actually just sweep through everything. I wanted to run Gracium Z as a way to really just do consistent damage across the board to pretty much anything other than Mega Scizor. If I could check the Mega Scizor, then Kartana really would be able to sweep through. I also opted for a Natural Gift Mamoswine set. I wanted to try it out, and with Natural Gift, with Cherry Berry, it turns into a Fire-type attack, and it can one-shot Mega Scizor. So the goal was basically, if I can knock out Mega Scizor, then Kartana really has a lot more room to sweep through this game, and so I wanted to have as many Scizor answers as possible. I opted for a kind of very offensive Life Orb Acelgor set as well, and this was kind of a fun set in theory, so I wanted to run Acid Spray because Acelgor, a lot of Pokemon in front of it probably want to switch out. If you look at his composition, something like Necrozma, for example, is probably going to be scared about it, Acelgor. And so I can go for Acid Spray, and whatever comes in will be able to get knocked out by one of the attacks that I have, whether it's Bug Buzz, HP Fire, or Energy Ball. So kind of just putting on the pressure immediately with that. The last two Pokemon were Conkeldurr. I opted for a Roselli Berry Conkeldurr because I was really worried about the Primarina. So I wanted, for example, if Conkeldurr was out and Primarina came in, I could take a Specs Moonblast and then retaliate back with a Poison Jab. And that would get the knockout after some chip damage from something like Rocks from Mamoswine. And then finally, a Mega Slowbro with max HP and special defense. Like I mentioned, I was really worried about some of the special attackers on his team, namely the Primarina, so I wanted something to really be able to soak in any special attacks and come in. But yeah, coming into this week, like, I think I had like a decent matchup, but hyper offense is something that I'm not too familiar with overall in singles. Although it's funny because in the draft leagues that I've been playing it feels like my teams have been more offense oriented than defense oriented. And to me, that's not the best drafting on my end. Like, I feel like there's a reason I haven't done too well in the draft leagues that I've been playing in, and that's because I opt for some of these really offensive Pokemon. Like, I keep drafting Kartana because it's good, but at the end of the day, like, there's only so much it can do. So even though like the matchup looked pretty good on paper, I felt like it could really go either way, and especially because I was a little bit unfamiliar with some of the Pokemon that he was running, especially in singles like Necrozma. Overall, yeah, I wanted good coverage against everything. So it's like, for example, Slowbro and Mamoswine could really check the Landorus, which I was kind of scared of as well. And kind of just wanted to pave the way for Kartana to really sweep through, like I mentioned. A couple things I was worried about were potential Choice Scarf users, namely on Landorus and potentially Necrozma as well. I was actually really worried about a potential like Hidden Power Fire on Scizor, which seems so silly, but Scizor is a great switch into Kartana, and even if it's teching HP Fire with like no special attack investment and admin nature, it can still knock out Kartana. I did opt for like a Gracium Z set here because I felt like it could do really good damage across the board with everything. But I was really debating between that and Assault Vest, and in retrospect, I think Assault Vest might have been a little bit better, but I've been running Choice Scarf Kartana for so many weeks in Draft League that I was like, maybe I can take advantage of the Z move here and get a big knockout onto a lot of different things. So yeah, The other Pokemon that I didn't bring into this week, of course, the options were like Miltank, which I actually heavily considered because it could like be a little bit better in terms of the defensive wall. I really thought about Drampa, or sorry, not Drampa, Guzzlord as well, but I just like wasn't the biggest fan given that it would go up against something like Primarina. And yeah, Primarina was the main thing I was scared of, but also like a bulky Scrafty. Scizor could do a lot of damage and just get consistent damage out through U-turn, so I opted not to bring those. So I felt okay about the sets. I felt like I had a, good chance of winning in terms of the sets that I brought, but I knew I'd have to play well offensively in order to be able to take it, because the thing with hyper offense is if you fall behind or if you're not making good predictions, then it's very easy to just lose Pokemon very quickly. And a lot of these Pokemon can actually one-shot like most of the things that Luke has on his team. But if I'm not in a position to go for a guaranteed safe play, and I don't make a good prediction, then I'll most likely be losing a lot of the offensive members that I'm using for very little mileage. And so that's something that was thinking about in the back of my mind coming into this week. Also, in terms of lead, I really wasn't too sure what I wanted to go with. Like, I always go with Mamoswine because it's such a consistent option, but I wanted this Life Orb Accelgor set because it actually knocks out max HP Necrozma if it doesn't have special defense investment, and it's a guaranteed knockout. So I thought heavily about leading Accelgor, but I was debating between Accelgor and Mamoswine, even Slowbro, depending on what he ended up bringing through Team Preview. So yeah, that's it for the team breakdown, and of course, you can see the battle right after this. So yeah, thanks for watching this part, guys, and I'll see you guys in the battle. Hey guys, welcome to the actual battle now against Luke. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do a live recording for this one, so my apologies. Like I mentioned, I'm like not always able to do live recordings, and so when the time permits, I definitely will do my best to. But yeah, my schedule is a little bit hectic, so I can't always ensure one. That being said, I know they're more enjoyable and fun to watch, and definitely more educational. So going forward, like I said, I will try my best to get them to you. Either way, so when I went into Team Preview against Luke, he ended up bringing everything that I expected, so nothing was too shocking. I was going to, debate leading between Accelgor and Mamoswine, but ultimately I thought Mamoswine was a pretty safe bet. I felt like the main thing was, Accelgor is a little bit risky if he doesn't lead the Necrozma, because I kind of want to use Accelgor as a late game sweeper, whereas I was expecting Necrozma as a lead, so I was like, okay, he's probably going to be relatively bulky variant like he has been in previous weeks, and so we can just trade rocks in the first turn, and I'm okay with that. So you're going to Team Preview, I was like, a couple things to note. One, obviously, because he brought everything I expected, well, that's good, but there are still a lot of major things, right? It feels like a lot of the members of my team can sweep through the majority of the team if they're able to knock out one or two Pokemon. So, for example, Mamoswine, very, very good against things like the Landorus and the Drampa, but kind of falls short against something like Scizor and Scrafty and Primarina. Accelgor, really good against the Scizor, against the Necrozma, but not so good against something like Landorus. The Rotom, really, really good here, but I do have to watch out for things that are faster, namely the Landorus here, as well as Primarina potentially getting big damage off against me. And Drampa, I can two-shot with Hidden Power Ice, but I do have to be careful about that. Cortana is really the key member here, right? It's so good against so many different things, especially if it gets a Swords Dance off, it can just sweep through everything. So if I can just check the Scizor and I can confirm the Landorus' item, then Cortana can really sweep through. So all eyes were on Cortana this game. Conkeldurr really used as kind of a pivot, but very good against certain things like Conkeldurr, like Drampa. And of course I did have the Roselli Berry, so I could take a potential Specs Moonblast from the Primarina and hit back with a Poison Jab. And finally Slowbro used as a special defense pivot against Primarina and Drampa specifically, and Necrozma as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into this battle. Like I mentioned in the team builder, I was actually still really scared of this game because I felt like I needed to play well and make good predictions in order to win the game, because my team is so hyper offensive, everything feints to pretty much 2 attacks from Luke's end. So that was really kind of in the back of my mind as I was thinking. So Luke does end up bringing the Necrozma, and at this point I'm like, oh man, I really could have brought a Accelgor that would have put on so much pressure immediately, and if he is like a slightly more offensive variant, then I'd be able to just knock him out immediately. But I'm also content trading Stealth Rocks here. I feel like the residual damage on everything on his team is quite good, so I'll take that. So I was a little bit worried of a potential Z move from Necrozma, but no Z move comes out, so we just end up trading rocks, and I'm okay with that. This next turn, of course, I do want to conserve Mamoswine because it is so important against the Landorus, so I end up switching out to Slowbro. I was actually really worried about a potential physical Z Necrozma, but once the Photon Geyser comes out, it confirms that it's probably not going to be that set. So max HP special defense Slowbro takes that like an absolute champion. This next turn, there are a bunch of plays I can go for. I can Skull to fish for a Scizor or a Scrafty switch in. I can Toxic, which covers everything but Scizor, or I can go for the Slack Off. I decided that Slack Off is the best option because I get guaranteed mileage off that, and I can scout out a little bit for what Necrozma wants to do if it stays in. And it actually does stay in and goes for the Toxic, which is a great move to be using against Mega Slowbro. So obviously that kind of puts a timer on me. I can't just stall forever now and stay in and just really go for shenanigans like Calm Mind, which I was running on this Slowbro. This next turn, I decided that Necrozma is probably going to switch out, so I decided to just go for a Toxic. Scizor is kind of a risky switch in because you might get burned by a Scald or even just get knocked out by a Flamethrower. So I was pretty happy to see Primarina come out because that's obviously kind of a major threat to my team. It's funny because so many things on my team can one-shot Primarina, like Kartana and Rotom. That being said, Primarina still really hits hard for Moonblast, especially because I don't have anything that can really take a Moonblast that comfortably. At this point, I want to see what item Primarina has, because going into this week, I really thought Choice Specs would be the most common item on it. So, the Moonblast comes out, and I look at the damage, and I'm like, I don't think that's Specs damage. It did, like, around 50% or so, but it could be Specs damage if he has, like, little special attack investment. So, I go for the Slack Off to heal everything back, and like I said, I just want to scout out for what Primarina really has. So, we kind of trade damage here. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I think it might be bulky Specs. So I switch into Mamoswine, or it's just not Specs. And so I figure that he's probably going to go for another Moonblast here. And I'm like, okay, max HP Mamoswine should be able to take this pretty well. Except I don't. And at this point, I'm like, okay, that's got to be Choice Specs, right? And it was just a low roll on Slowbro earlier. Maybe he's not max special attack. So I decided to Earthquake, but it actually ends up not being Specs. It was like a, at this point, I'm like, oh man, maybe it's like a fairy boosting item, like the fairy pixie plate, and I lose Mamoswine for nothing, which is obviously so bad. Like, I went for Earthquake there, 100% confident that I would just get a free knockout or free damage onto anything. So now I'm obviously in a really bad position, just losing Mamoswine the way I did. So I decided to bring in Kartana just to put on some pressure, and I'm deciding between Swords Dance and Leaf Blade here. I end up just playing it safe, going for the Leaf Blade. Swords Dance really would have been quite nice here because then Sacred Sword is a 2-hit KO onto the Scizor. Instead, Leaf Blade really does minimal damage there. So, once again, not a great turn for me. And at this point, I'm like, I could Swords Dance, but I'm so worried about a potential Hidden Power Fire, which I know sounds so silly, but is definitely a tech move that Scizor could be running. That I actually end up switching out into Slowbro because I didn't really feel very comfortable switching out into anything else, to be quite honest. Like, Rotom would take so much damage from rocks, and that's kind of a problem. Although I do think Rotom probably would have been a better switch-in. And the knockoff comes out, which was even more frustrating because I obviously could have stayed in with Kartana, gone for a Swords Dance, and then just Sacred Sworded. So, Slowbro at this point is also really, really getting heavily damaged. I don't feel comfortable enough switching it out. I figure he's going to U-turn here, so I'm like, okay, I'll just sack Slowbro, he'll switch into something, and then I'll have the advantage because I get a free switch-in into something. So, Slowbro goes down. I know I'm down right now. This game is definitely winnable, though, so not giving up yet. The Landorus comes in, though, and at this point I'm like, oh, man, like, what item does that Landorus have? I'm really, really worried about the Choice Scarf, and I, quite frankly, just don't think I played well around it, and he actually does end up being Choice Scarfed with the Hidden Power Fire. I was like, if he's not Choice Scarfed, I can just Z-move here and kind of obliterate him. And I just didn't play well around that at all, and I don't know why. Like, I really should have scouted out for it. I was thinking of bringing in Conkeldurr, but my Conkeldurr didn't have Ice Punch, and I was worried about flying MZ Landorus. And at this point, I've lost, like, my main win conditions in this game. So, with Hyper Offense, like, just to lose all the Pokemon like I did while getting nothing off is so, so bad. So, Luke has been playing really well, and quite honestly, I've just been making boneheaded plays. This next turn, I go for the Defog, but I think Hidden Power Ice, honestly, would have been better, especially because Drampa switches in, and 2 HP Ices would have knocked out the Drampa. Now, Rotom being such a good Pokemon against his team does a lot of damage, but the downside of running an offensive Rotom Heat is I'll just get knocked out by everything. So, HP Ice actually does really good damage to Drampa there, enough where 2 Hidden Power Ices certainly would have knocked it out, but I'm just going to fall short to a Dragon Pulse here, so at this point, I'm like, okay, my goal is to not get 6-0, basically. And it's, like, I don't have much of a chance to win at this point because I don't have an Ice-type attack on a Selgor or Conkeldurr, and Conkeldurr and Landorus can really just sweep through me. So I just go for some damage here. Bug Buzz is a relatively safe play here, and Drampa actually does fall down. So we do get a knockout, get on the board, but still not looking too great, obviously, especially because he still has a bunch of different Pokemon. So Scrafty comes out, and I'm like, okay, in terms of differential sake, like Scrafty here, I can probably switch out into Conkeldurr. He's going to stay in, and then he's probably going to go out into Necrozma, so I can switch the Asalgor back in and try to knock out Necrozma. The game's actually still not technically over because I don't know the Landorus is set, so obviously I'm not giving up at this point, but I have just lost way too much for absolutely nothing. Like, I've been giving up Pokemon for free, and that's obviously not good. So, Conkeldurr comes out, and like I said, I expect the Necrozma to switch out here, so I switch my Conkeldurr out into Asalgor. And like I mentioned, I'm modest max special attack with Life Orb, which guarantee knocks out Necrozma if it's max HP and no special defense bulk. Which was something that I could definitely see, like, you know, max HP, max special attack was something that was definitely within the realm of possibility, but he actually ends up being a very, very bulky Necrozma, survives that with about 10% or so, and, yeah. So, I eat the Photon Geyser. I was expecting to get knocked out here, but that just confirms that the Necrozma is super, super bulky with, like, no investment, pretty much, as it heals a little bit back from the leftovers. At this point, I'm like, okay, maybe he'll switch out into Scizor in terms of battle differential. I'll go for the Hidden Power to potentially pick it off. And I was thinking so hard between HP Fire and HP Ice for Asalgor this week, but I opted for Fire because I felt like Scizor was the bigger threat that I was worried about. Ends up being Landorus. Obviously, an HP Ice there would have been quite nice, and now I've just got Conkeldurr in the back, and without Ice Punch, I really can't do anything. So, honest to God, I mean, I got demolished this game, and I actually want to spend about 10 minutes or so after this to analyze it, because there's a lot that I could have done better. But yeah, I mean, I can't do anything here. I'm running Drain Punch, Mach Punch, Poison Jab, and Earthquake. So Drain Punch actually does so much damage. I'm like, oh, maybe I can actually get the knockout here. But it ends up being a critical hit. So I'm like, I don't even think Mach Punch will seal up the deal here for me. So go for the Mach Punch, and we don't knock it out. And Landorus here does retaliate for a knockout. And that will be the game. So Luke, in a very, very one-sided game, does take the win. So he's 2-1 now, and 3-0, and I fall down to 1-2. So I actually wanted to take a little bit of time after the game to reflect on what went wrong and where I could have improved in, because I think this was definitely one of the biggest blowout losses that I faced in Draft League. And I think there were a lot of key issues here that really could have been improved on. And one of the things is I've been pretty content just playing, you know, all these singles draft leagues in the last year or so, but I really feel like I've been improving a little bit in terms of game knowledge, but I feel like fundamentally there's some core issues that I really do need to tackle, and I feel like this analysis might be helpful for you as well as for me, because this was, there were a lot of mistakes made in this game. So, just going to go through all of them point by point. First of all, I'm going to assess where I could have played better in the actual game. So I kind of designated it by turn, but turn 4 was a pivotal turn where when I had Slowbro in against Necrozma, it's very unlikely Necrozma is going to do anything there after it gets the Toxic off, and it's almost always going to pivot out and very likely into something like Primarina or Scizor, and Rotom's obviously an excellent answer against both of those. So I should have just instantly switched out Slowbro into Rotom there. Would have given me a lot of offensive positioning, especially because the Primarina did end up coming out. In turns 5 through 7, I ended up, taking a lot of damage with Slowbro, healing it back up, and then switching in Mamoswine, and then Mamoswine taking all the damage was the key mistake because it was so good against Landorus, especially because he wasn't Yache Landorus in the end. So I 100% shouldn't have risked switching in Mamoswine in the first place. Maybe even it'd be okay to trade my Slowbro for Primarina in the sense that I'm probably going to faint before the Toxic KOs the Primarina, but then I can just get a free switching into something like Kartana or Rotom, or even Conkeldurr, and maybe just go for a Mach Punch. Alternatively, if I don't want to give up Slowbro, I can also just, heal back up until like 60%ish or so, and then switching Conkeldurr to take a Moonblast, and then that plus another tick of Toxic will probably KO it. And trading Conkeldurr, I think, for Primarina is actually not bad in this one, in this game, if it means Slowbro and Mamoswine come out relatively healthy. The turn where I had Kartana in against Scizor was a very obvious switch out there. Like, I went for the Leaf Blade, I wasn't sure if Sacred Sword would get the knockout there, and I didn't want Primarina staying in and going for something like a Hidden Power Fire just as a potential option. So I played so safe there, it didn't work out, and the Scizor took the Leaf Blade, and I had to switch Kartana back out, especially because I was worried about HP Fire, which I think was a slightly irrational fear. Like, sure, it's possible he's carrying it, but it's relatively unlikely. So that was pretty bad. Between turns 9 and 10, the turns where I switch Slowbro back into Scizor, there's just no reason to sack it for absolutely nothing. The main issue here is that I was using Slowbro as a defensive pivot, but it was actually an excellent offensive option against Landorus as well, and Landorus was the biggest threat to my team. So I didn't really assess that well enough, and I was comfortable giving up Slowbro, but then I realized, oh man, if this is Scarf Special Landorus, then I don't really have much to deal with it. And I felt like I kind of gave up at that point in the game, and that's exactly what happened in turn 12, where I didn't scout out for Scarf Landorus, because I was like, oh man, what do I do? You know, the best option there is to switch into Kartana, and I think immediately hard pivot out into Rotom, because Landorus should be going for a ground type attack or hidden power, like Earth Power or hidden power in that position. And Rotom can obviously take both of those. So that would have at least allowed me to scout out for what he was, and a switch out there would confirm that he is Choice Scarfed, whereas I could get like a relatively free overheat in that position. So giving up Kartana was just terrible. But honestly, it's also a mistake on my end not to even have good answers against Special Scarf Landorus, which was obviously like not a huge surprise to run into. And then at this point, the game was pretty much over, but defogging the turn where the Landorus switched out, like, it gets rid of the rocks on my end as well, right? So I should just probably hit Power Ice there, especially because Drampa came in, so I could have just two-shot the Drampa for free and gotten a free knockout, which would have made my life a little bit easier in terms of differential for Conkeldurr and a Selgor. And the game wasn't necessarily over at that point, but I had very little to deal with Landorus. I don't know what his set was, but of course Rotom did have a chance to one-shot it with HP Ice if he didn't have a way to guarantee knock out the Rotom, especially if it's like a low accurate rock type move like Stone Edge or Rock Slide. So fundamentally, I felt like this team definitely could have won, but I'm not a good enough singles player, and I haven't been a good enough singles player to really have made it work. So a couple key problems overall outside of gameplay. The team was too offensive, and with this kind of team, yeah, it can be really good if you play well. I just didn't play well because I made no good reads, and as a VGC player, I feel like I tend to go for the safer play because you know, there are a lot of games where, especially in singles, where it feels like you can just throw an entire game away by losing your win con. And that's actually kind of funny. Because that is what I did, even though I was trying to play safe. And I played safe when it wasn't important, and I didn't play safe during the most pivotal turns in this game. So I felt like everything was just completely jumbled up. Like I said, I gave up my key win conditions for absolutely nothing. Like, to give up Kartana and Rotoms the way I did was just so bad. As well as Mamoswine. And that, I think, I don't feel as bad about, because that's just really good prep on Luke's end, and it's something that, like, Metronome Primarina, which was what it ended up being, was not something I was prepared for in the slightest. That being said, switching in Mamoswine is just risky in that position, and even if it wasn't Specs Moonblast, right, like, a Moonblast is still doing a lot of damage to me, and I actually kind of just did, like, brain farted on Primarina having Aqua Jet. That's not something I expected, and so I gave up Mamoswine way too freely there, and that was my best check against the Landorus. I think having Ice Punch on Conkeldurr would have been really good. I think also just an Assault Vest variant would have been better. Would have been, like, the main thing is I was scared of Specs Primarina, so I was like, oh, if I run this, like, yeah, if I run this variant, then I can take a Specs Moonblast and retaliate back with a Poison Jab for a knockout. But Assault Vest Ice Punch, I think, just would have done a lot more things for me in this game, especially as answers against the Landorus, because Landorus was obviously such a key problem, and it was one that I don't know why I felt confident going up against before this game. I think I, put into my head, yeah, like, Scarf is going to be such a good set, but for some reason I feel like he's not going to run it, but I had no rationale behind it, so just poor team building on my end there. I needed a more defensive switch-ins with the team overall, and that's a problem with my draft as opposed to the overall build. Like, the only other bulky Pokemon I really have is Miltank, and that's not really even that bulky of a Pokemon. Slowbro is honestly an excellent Pokemon for this team, but it needs more options. You can't just have, like, honestly, like, I ran an offensive Rotom Keep, but maybe a bulkier variant would have been better here. Lead-wise, I didn't write this down, but I also could have led a Selgor, although that actually wouldn't have gotten the knockout onto Necrozma, which is kind of funny. I don't know what the set on his Necrozma was in terms of bulk, but clearly enough because his Photron Geyser was doing so little. And finally, I mean, like I was talking about, I was playing so scared around certain sets that were unlikely, like Hidden Power Fire Scizor, but then I wasn't playing smart around things that were obvious, like Scarf Landorus, Special Scarf Landorus. So, overall, I don't really know what I was doing in this game, honestly. And it is really kind of embarrassing, because I feel like this is not the quality play that anyone in a draft league of the WBE caliber should be like. So quite honestly, quite frankly, I'm embarrassed about my performance. And after, like, the entire time I was playing, I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I'm literally just clicking buttons, and I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. So first of all, I mean, complete credits to Luke, because he was absolutely the better player, prepped better, and had a really phenomenal team, and just made some great plays throughout the course of it. So yeah, it was one of those losses where it's funny. I, like, walked out and I was like, I don't really feel too bad, because I was clearly outclassed, and so I can learn a lot of good lessons from this. There was no RNG involved. There was just no shenanigans, honestly, overall. Just a lot of things that I can improve on. So fundamentally, I think I'm going to actually go back to the draft board and see if there's things I can switch around, because this hyper offense is just not working out. And these things are too frail. I don't have enough defensive pivots. I'm not good enough of a player, especially in draft league where like you're second guessing everything because anything could have hidden power, anything could have the Z move, and anything could, especially when you're running more for a Pokemon, right? Like Kartana, Selga, Rotom. I mean, like this was as frail as a team as it gets. And so a lot of key takeaways from this one, but overall just need to be better. If I am bringing a team as offensive as I did this week, I need to play better, right? And if not, then I need to go back to the drawing board and do better things in terms of team building. Anyway, I hope you guys found this educational. I'm sorry for the fans who were looking for a good game because, quite frankly, like I said, this is just kind of an embarrassing performance. But I think there's a lot to learn from. And fundamentally, I know that I'm not going to be in these draft leagues to be the very best, but I'm here to improve, especially because I want to make a more active effort with them as Sword and Shield comes out, because I think competitive will be really fun then. But yeah, like there's no reason to be underperforming, and certainly no reason to be losing as badly as I did. Although I don't want to take any credit away from Luke, right? He played phenomenally and had really, really good prep. I just think there's a lot on my end that could have been improved on, that could have made this at least a little bit closer. Fundamentally, this was the matchup where, like, because I had a lot of offense, certainly could have gone both ways, but I need to be making way more aggressive reads, and I'm not comfortable enough to be making those reads, so then it goes back to the team building aspect. So a lot of things that can be improved in, both in team building and in play, but we still have a lot of weeks left in the league, so still far from over. My goal really, like, I don't even mind not making playoffs just to win half the games and get good experience. And this is certainly a lot of good lessons to be learned from here. So yeah, hope you guys found this slightly educational. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Once again, full credits to Luke for being an incredible player and just really coming with some great prep. Like, had a lot of key mistakes that I could have done better, but the thing, it's funny, right? Because even if I did the things that I'm talking about here, it's not like I could have guaranteed a win by any means, because Luke was playing well and he had a better team. So that's a testament to the prep that he put in, plus his caliber as a player. So definitely rooting for him. Looking forward to seeing what he does in the remainder of the league. He has a really great start, and I think he's got some really good Pokemon and really good play as well. So yeah, hope you guys found this video slightly educational. I enjoyed making it, and I like analyzing games, whether they're wins or losses. I think losses are more fun to analyze anyway. So hopefully we'll be back stronger next week. But either way, sorry to disappoint you guys for this week, but do my best to improve throughout the course of the season. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to check out Luke, by the way, as well. Peace.